This modern Middle East map shows borders drawn by 20th century empires, shifting through decades of warfare and diplomacy. But beneath these lines lies another map dictating a state's actions, one drawn thousands of years ago by an ancient theological text. For centuries, the concept of Eretz Israel HaShlima, or Greater Israel, operated strictly as a philosophical, theological, and legal framework. In Jewish tradition, it represented a spiritual yearning for wholeness, distinct from any modern political state. That yearning stems from passages like this ancient text. In Genesis chapter 15, God makes a specific geographic promise to Abraham. The text grants his descendants a territory stretching from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, a maximalist royal grant. This 18th century map illustrates those territories divided among the 12 tribes of Israel. Overlaying that biblical footprint onto today's globe encompasses parts of modern-day Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and reaches deep into Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Applying a 3,000-year-old divine promise to a 21st century military strategy creates a volatile situation, basing territorial claims on spiritual mandates. These mandates operate completely outside the bounds of international law. In the 1920s, the early Zionist movement fractured over how to actually build a nation. The debate centered on whether to pursue pragmatic state building or demand maximum territory. Mainstream labor Zionism, led by figures like David Ben-Gurion, prioritized creating a functional, democratic haven for Jews fleeing European anti-Semitism. Recognizing the demographic realities of the Arab population and British mandate constraints, they accepted the pragmatic partition of the land. Zev Jabotinsky fiercely rejected those compromises. In 1925, he founded Revisionist Zionism in direct opposition to labor Zionism's willingness to divide the territory. Jabotinsky demanded a Jewish state spanning both sides of the Jordan River, incorporating all of mandatory Palestine and the newly formed Transjordan. He formalized this approach in his Iron Wall theory. Jabotinsky argued that the indigenous Arab population would never voluntarily accept Jewish colonization. Therefore, expansion could only be achieved through overwhelming, uncompromising armed force. Revisionist Zionism took the ancient spiritual yearning of Greater Israel and forged it into a rigid political program enforced by military strength, setting the ideological blueprint for future territorial expansion. Decades later, the 1967 Six-Day War ignited that blueprint. In less than a week, a rapid military victory resulted in the massive acquisition of new territory. The Israeli military captured the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. Before 1967, many Orthodox Jews opposed the secular state. But the sheer scale of this victory triggered a Messianic awakening, particularly through the teachings of the Kukian school of religious Zionism, which interpreted the military triumph as literal divine intervention. Rabbi Zvi Yehuda Kook taught that the conquest of the biblical heartlands was the beginning of the redemption. The secular state and its military were suddenly re-sacralized as instruments of God's will. This fervor led to the 1974 formation of Gush Emunim, or the Bloc of the Faithful. They believed that settling these newly captured territories was a religious duty that superseded any secular government authority or international border. This era merged military might with messianic fervor. It established a precedent where illegal outposts and state expansion are viewed as predestined acts of God, requiring absolute allegiance from followers. Today, that messianic vision is codified state policy. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, a key architect of the current governing coalition, now wields sweeping executive powers over civilian affairs in the West Bank. Smotrich operates from a blueprint he published in 2017 called the Decisive Plan. Its core premise is that decades of managing the conflict have failed and must be replaced by a strategy of decisive victory and full permanent sovereignty over the territories. The plan explicitly states its ultimate goal: to cement the political and practical reality that there is room for only one expression of national self-determination west of the Jordan River. This doctrine physically erases the 1967 Green Line through a massive infrastructure program. The government is rapidly constructing heavy settlement housing deep inside occupied territory, integrating these areas directly into the Israeli core. It relies on a dual infrastructure of subjugation. While Israeli settlers use seamless sovereignty roads to travel freely, Palestinian communities face newly installed iron gates, checkpoints, and roadblocks that fragment their towns into disconnected, isolated enclaves. These actions have triggered severe international legal backlash. In July 2024, the International Court of Justice ruled that this systemic expansion and administrative integration amount to annexation, declaring the occupation unlawful. Yet the state continues to navigate a normalization paradox. Through agreements like the Abraham Accords, it successfully bypasses the Palestinian issue to deepen economic and security ties with regional governments, even as its territorial maximalism turns global public sentiment sharply against it. The Greater Israel Doctrine has successfully transitioned from an ancient biblical text into an ironclad state policy. The result is a persistent tension between a theology of permanent exception and global requirements for human dignity and the rule of law. To further explore the forces that shape our world, visit einsof7.com.